So today I'm going to be taking a look at this case from ABKONCORE. This is the T250. I'll put an Amazon affiliate link in the description below if you want to check this out. But this is a tempered glass case, tempered glass on the front and the side panel. So it's going to probably, and my expectation will be it'll have all the same cooling problems that those types of cases have. But it does have the mesh inlets, but we'll see how it does. So anyways, if this is a case that you're interested in, stick around. I'm going to do a quick build in it and we'll take a look at what it looks like. It's got, I think, 420 millimeter fans included. Take a look at those, see how they do, see how they look. Let's go ahead and get it unboxed and take a look at it. Okay, so here's the ABKONCORE T250 case. On first glance, it looks pretty good. The glass is nicely protected with all its plastic films on there. It was rattling around quite a bit. I could see down in the bottom where it had just some extra pieces in there. This is just a fairly typical standard mid-tower case. It's got the magnetic filter on the top. The front panel has power reset, a power light, hard drive light, mic, headset, 2 USB 2.0 and 1 USB 3.0 connectors. So no USB-C. If we go around the side, the 4 screws, thumb screws, and this side panel will come off. These do have kind of a rubberized gasket, or it's not really a washer, but it's a rubberized gasket. And there's no real mechanism holding the case up, so you just want to kind of keep a hand on it while you've got it. Lift that right off, and it's protected from the factory on both sides. And it's got 3 pre-installed fans. This one up here is just a 3-pin, so no PWM on there. They're really basic fans. And obviously you got a power supply window. You'll have to be the judge whether you like the big ABKONCORE logo right there. I actually don't mind their logo, so it's not terrible. You always wish maybe they'd do something different there, but not a big deal. So the front panel does pull off. You just got to give it a firm tug. There's no screws holding it. And that is it. There's really not much to it. You just get the typical mesh inlet grills there, which are, in my experience, usually not really adequate. It just depends on what you're running in there. A lot of times, if you remove this front panel, you'll notice your temps go down, by a substantial amount. So you just kind of have to, like everything else when you're building these, you just kind of got to test it. To get the other cover off, fairly typical, just 2 thumb screws. So you get just a small amount of cable management space back here. There's maybe 1/2 an inch, 3/4 of an inch, of clearance between that side panel, maybe just a touch more. So it'll be tight in here. If you're running a bunch of RGB fans and things like that, you're gonna have to get creative. And you do get a drive bay up here. And this will house a 3.5 inch and a 2.5 inch drive. You can remove that drive cage with 2 screws on the bottom here. And you would need to remove this to fully secure those drives. There's 2 positions for that. It doesn't really explain why there's 2 positions for this drive cage, but I guess it just depends on, I'm going to move it to the forward position, get a little more clearance, so it'll sit right by this fan here. But anyways, so you can mount your 3.5 inch drive there, 2.5 inch drive up there. You can also, internally, you can mount 2 additional 2.5 inch drives using these screws here and then these screws here. There are no screw holes on this side, but there's these little just little metal punch ends right there that will just sit in the screw hole of the drive. But that should be good enough to secure those right there should you choose to do that. So an interesting note is the fans in the front look identical to the rear fan. Now the rear fan is a 3-pin, so DC controlled fan, but the 3 in the front are these old school, just Molex power connections. So you're not gonna get any fan control for those. So this might be a good candidate to replace these fans out with something a little more robust, but you know, it's an entry-level case and that's what's included. So that is pretty much it. The only other thing to really note is there is a power supply filter, not magnetic. You just got to pull it out and put it in, but at least it's there. So that can be an intake and an output for your power supply. That's fairly standard these days. Fairly typical front panel connections, USB, audio, USB, this is USB 3, HD audio, USB, and then just your power supply lights. These will just be your standard front panel, your button, your reset, hard drive light, power light, etc. And that is pretty much it. It is just a very typical, very standard case, and it's very, very light. But let's go ahead and we'll get a quick build done in this and go from there, see how it looks. All right, well, there you have it. There's the T250 mid-tower case from ABKONCORE. Overall, my impression of this case is quite positive. One of the primary reasons for getting this case and taking a look at it was just the aesthetic of it is cool. So, and in that department, I think they really nailed it. It's got this simple, elegant design, and I really like it personally. And it kind of met all my expectations, what I hoped it would look like in person. So it doesn't try to be an overly expensive case, but it's not super cheap either. I think it was 85 bucks is what I paid for it. Maybe a couple bucks too much, but again, overall, I think in the looks department, that's where it's at. So it is not without its flaws, which we'll get into in just a second. But you know, my build experience in it was positive, but you know, fairly typical of cases like this. There's nothing really that stands out, but there was nothing really terrible in it either. So you know, it sounds like a broken record half the time, but cable management in these smaller cases is always kind of a challenge. Now, I chose not to do any additional RGB fans or lighting elements. I just stuck with the stock fans that they included. And so there's no controllers or additional cables back here. And certainly it would be a challenge to do so, but I could certainly get it in there okay. You know, you might just have to get a little bit creative. So don't let that deter you. You know, there would be a limit to how much you could stick in there, of course, but you can certainly overcome those obstacles. So you know, in regards to the fans, there are some of the cheaper fans that I've encountered with some of these cases. They look good though, I'll give it that, but it just kind of feels like a cheaper fan when you're working with it, you know, and messing around with it. Just it's kind of a cheap plasticky fan, and so more so than normal. And it's kind of an odd move that they would use the 3 Molex connections, you know, piggybacked up front, and the 3-pin DC connector in the back. So not sure why they chose to do that. You know, overall though, the fans work, and I think they do actually look good. These are not RGB or ARGB. These are just static LED lights in the fan. So these colors are what you get. You know, but that said, they do look pretty good, and you know, get to it in just a second, but you know, the cooling was okay on them. It worked good enough. And so anyways, you know, maybe you consider replacing the fans on this if you've got some cooling needs. But in the cooling department, it does have room for you know, a radiator on the top and a radiator in the front. It's kind of tight right there, but it does show that you can get that in there. So, and it's got the mounting spots for those. So the only real frustration I had with this case overall was this little rubber grommet. So where the screws go into the side panel here, you know, the screw goes through the glass and then into this little rubber grommet, which then protects it from the side of the case. These are just kind of cheap stickers, really, that they just stuck on there. So they kept popping off on me, which just kind of detracts from the overall experience a little bit. It's like, you know, glue them on or do something. But anyways, like, they kept falling off, and I was having to chase them around the floor, and it's just a mild minor gripe. So it doesn't, you know, it's not a deal killer on this case. It's just like, you just wish they'd take a little more time and, you know, tidy some of that stuff up. So anyways, other than that though, the glass fits good, looks great, no issues there. In the cooling department, it's just right on par with everything that I've tested with this same hardware in other cases. You know, just you know, running some benchmarking tests and things like that and heating it up as best I can. This is right there. It's not, maybe it's a degree or two better actually, but it's really probably on average right in the same you know, range. I think, you know, in the very low 70s was the temperature I got. However, like most of these, when I pop the front cover off, I get 7-8 degrees cooler on the CPU temps, you know, within just a minute or two. So this really is just as restrictive as the rest of them. With it on, it cools adequately. With it off, it cools much better. But you know, this is not powerful hardware in here. Your results may vary. So if you're running super powerful hardware, you know, heavy duty stuff, it's going to be probably the same story as all of them. You know, like a mesh front's going to be better. So anyways, that being said, overall, I think it's just a good case. For 85 bucks, it might be a couple bucks too much, but if it's an aesthetic you like, go for it. And anyways, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, put it in the description below. I'll be happy to answer those as to the best I can. And that is going to do it for now. Thanks for watching.